Howdy, this is Jason Moreno, and we're continuing with the series with Christ Memorial Lutheran Church and Lori Shumalak, focusing on knowing God. And so this week, we're focusing on the idea that God sees and hears. Now, I wanted to look a little bit at a passage from Hebrews 4. It says in Hebrews 4, starting at verse 12, "For the word of God is living and active, sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing to the division of soul and of spirit, of joints and of marrow, and discerning the thoughts and intentions of the heart. And no creature is hidden from his sight, but all are naked and exposed to the eyes of him to whom we must give account." Now, when we hear verses like this, it can oftentimes be very disconcerting. It can be this feeling of, oh no, I'm exposed, I'm seen for who I am. And what we can do is we can have certain reactions to this. There are those who would think of this in terms of shame. If God can see and hear and know everything about us, then that means that he also sees and hears and knows everything that is dark or that is evil about us. And so we might feel shame or guilt because of this. Now, that can end up becoming not just consuming because that can torture us, but also it might make us afraid to try anything, afraid to be open and honest about the things that we're going through. We might hide the struggles that we have even deeper inside because we just don't want to have to deal with it or face it, but we feel ashamed or guilty about it. With this, then, it may also make it so that we can't really make decisions in life because we're afraid of what might happen if the outcomes don't go the way that we hope that they would. Maybe we think that, oh, well, I'm so messed up, I'm so faulty, and therefore I'm going to fail. Now, that's one way of looking at this. Another way of looking at this is basically denying it. Denying the idea that there is any sort of God who looks over us and sees us and knows us in that way. So by just rejecting the concept as a whole, then therefore we can try to ignore it and think that it's not really there. So with that, then, we would reject the idea of God being gracious because we're not thinking of God having any sort of judgment over us anyways. With that, it's not really a question of whether there is a God or not. We just don't want to have to deal with it. We don't want to think about it. We don't want to face it. Because we don't want to look at the idea of guilt. We don't want to think of the idea that we have made mistakes and that there's any darkness inside of us. So if we just push it away, then therefore we don't have to deal with it. But this passage actually wants us to think about a third option. And continuing with verse 14, it says, "Since then we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus the Son of God, let us hold fast our confession. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who in every respect has been tempted as we are, yet without sin. Let us then with confidence draw near to the throne of grace, that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in time of need." So, as we're looking at this, we almost are tempted to even go back to the whole idea of, well, this Jesus that somehow is connecting us to God, well, he was without sin, right? So we try to go back to that original idea of either feeling ashamed again, or getting the idea of, well, we don't want to think of Jesus being God or that priest between us and God connecting us with him because we don't want to think of that being something we'd have to face. But again, we don't want to go with options 1 and 2, even when we think of them in this new way. We want to look at the overall idea of what the passage is trying to tell us. Overall, this is trying to say the person who connects us with God has been in our lives, has been in our footsteps. Seeing us and knowing us is not just a question of, I see you, I hear you, I know you, and so therefore I'm going to blame you. It's, I see you, I hear you, I know you, and therefore I love you, I have compassion on you. The idea that God has actually walked in our footsteps and been among us is something that ends up transforming our relationship with him. Because then what we're able to do is we're able to say, I'm now one with you because of your son, because of who he is, because of the fact that he is one of us. And so therefore when God looks at us, he's able to see, well, yes, I see the flaws, I see the struggles, but that doesn't stop me from loving you. And I love you even more now. And I see you and I know you. So I want you to show me more of who you are. Because the more you show of who you are to me at being your God, the more compassion and love I can give you, and the more that I can be there for you and support you now and always.